Dream of the Red Chamber Chapter 49.
Imagine for a second that you finally curated the perfect life. You're living in this incredibly beautiful, secluded estate, the Grand View Garden. You've got your best friends, your routines, your inside jokes. You really feel like the cast of characters for your life is set.
It's comfortable. It's safe.
Exactly. And then literally overnight, the gates just throw open.
And we're not talking about a casual visitor or two dropping by for tea.
No, not at all. It's a flood, a literal crowd of long-lost relatives, these beautiful cousins, and just a ton of new personalities that completely upend the dynamic.
It creates a moment of unprecedented liveliness. But you're right, it is a total disruption of the status quo. And if you look at the timeline of the Jia family saga, this moment feels, well, it feels like the absolute peak.
The peak of their prosperity, their artistic spirit, just general happiness.
It really is the zenith. What's so fascinating here is that the author, he essentially decides that the garden wasn't crowded enough with talent.
Right.
So he introduces this massive influx of new characters all at once. And why this specific moment represents a kind of golden age for our main protagonists, Bao Yu and the 12 Beauties.
We're going to talk about a major breakthrough for an aspiring poet, a pretty wild coincidence that brings three different families together, and Bao Yu's total existential crisis about beauty.
And, of course, the intricate politics of who gets to sleep where.
Which, in a house this big, is basically blood sport.
Room allocation is high politics. Definitely.
I can only imagine. But before we get to the chaos of all the new arrivals, we have to start with a character who has been there all along, but is finally sort of finding her voice.
You're talking about Xiangling.
Yes, Xiangling, the maid who has been desperately trying to learn how to write poetry. We've touched on her before, but she's always been a bit on the periphery.
And it's so important to remember her context. Xiangling wasn't born into this elite circle. She was kidnapped as a child, sold into the household.
Right.
So for her to attempt regulated verse, which is this highly technical, very difficult form of poetry reserved for the literati, it's audacious. She's essentially trying to cross class lines through art.
I just love this storyline. It's the classic underdog arc, and she presents a new poem to Dai Yu and the group in this chapter, and she's just a nervous wreck.
Oh, totally. She literally tells them, if this one works, I'll keep learning. If it's no good, I'm just going to kill this desire to write poetry forever.
The stakes are so high for her.
Incredibly high. It's about her whole identity. And the poem she produces is actually quite sophisticated. It centers on the imagery of the moon's essence is hard to mask.
Okay, let's unpack that imagery for a second, because when I read it, it felt surprisingly melancholic for someone who's just happy to be included, you know. She writes about washing blocks beating and red sleeves leaning on the tower. I get the red sleeves thing. That's a classic trope for a beautiful woman. But what is the deal with the washing blocks? That went right over my head.
That's a very specific, very evocative soundscape in Chinese classical poetry. You have to picture it. In the old days, women would wash clothes by beating them against stone blocks with these wooden sticks.
Okay.
And they usually did this in the autumn or winter evenings, preparing winter clothes for their husbands. But here's the catch. The husbands were often away, at war, serving as officials somewhere far away.
So that sound, that rhythm of beating the clothes.
It's the sound of separation. It's the sound of domestic longing. So by using that audio cue, Xiangling is tapping into this deep tradition of sorrow and loneliness.
Wow.
She even ends the poem with a line to the moon goddess, Chang'e, asking, why do you not allow us to be eternally reunited?
That is heavy stuff for a practice poem. But the group, they love it, right?
They do. They don't just say, nice try. They applaud it as novel and interesting. And they quote a really famous proverb here that I think applies to anyone trying to learn something hard.
What is it?
There were no difficult tasks in the world, only people with heart.
I need to put that on a sticky note on my monitor. Only people with heart. And so the result is she's officially invited to join the poetry club.
Which is so significant. It sets the theme for this whole chapter. Expansion, inclusion. The circle is widening.
Yeah.
And just as Xiangling steps inside that inner circle...
the physical doors of the Jia household are about to burst open.
Exactly.
Right, let's get to the disruption. The scene shifts so dramatically. We go from this quiet poetry appreciation to servants just rushing in, shouting about aunts and cousins and brothers.
It's total confusion. Even Li Wan, who is usually the calm, unflappable one, is like, wait, whose relatives? Explain yourself.
It's a bit of a puzzle at first.
It is. What happens is this massive narrative coincidence. You have three completely separate families, the Xings, the Leis, and the Zhus, who all just happened to meet while traveling to the capital.
And they just decided to caravan together.
Realized they were all heading to the same place, so they traveled together for safety and company. It's very practical.
Okay, I definitely needed a flowchart for this part because the names started blurring together. Let's break down the roster so we know who exactly walked through that door.
Sure, let's do it by family connection. First up, you have the Xing family. This is Lady Xing's brother and her sister-in-law. They brought their daughter, Xingxian.
And what's their deal? Just a friendly visit?
Not really. They are essentially broke. They're coming to the capital to rely on Lady Xing for support. So Xingxian is what you call the poor relation.
Got it. One cousin, financially dependent. Then we have the Li family.
Right. This connects to Li Wan. It's her widowed aunt, and she's brought her two daughters, Li Wen and Li Qi.
Two more cousins.
Yeah.
Okay. And finally, the Su family gets bigger.
Yes. We know Su Pan and Bao Chai, but now their cousin, Su Yike, has arrived, and he's brought his sister, Su Baoqin.
So if I'm doing the math, that's 4 new young women, Xuan, Li Wen, Li Qi Baoqin, and 1 young man, Su Ke, plus the older relatives.
It is a lot of house guests to drop on someone unannounced.
The text describes the scene in Lady Wang's room as a floor covered in a mass of people. Just this crowded, dark room where everyone's trying to figure out who's who.
It's a family reunion on steroids happening in a single room.
And I thought it was hilarious that Grandmother Jia actually claims she predicted this. She mentions that the night before, the lamp wicks were exploding.
The exploding lamp wick, I love that detail. It's a very specific superstition. In those oil lamps, sometimes the wick burns and forms a little knot of carbon that pops.
And that's a good thing.
It looks a bit like a flower. And in Chinese folklore, that's an omen of a joyous event or the arrival of guests.
So Grandmother Jia is just sitting there like, I knew it, the lamp told me so.
Exactly. It validates her intuition.
So the house is full. But this isn't just about overcrowding. It's about the quality of the guests. And this triggers a major reaction from Bayou. This felt like a really pivotal moment for him.
It is one of my favorite Bayou moments
Yeah.
in the entire book. He rushes back to his own residence, Yihong Yuan, in a complete frenzy. He's talking to his maids Aroma, Musk Moon, Skybright, and he's practically hyperventilating.
He uses that really specific metaphor to describe himself. He calls himself a frog in the well.
He does. It's the idiom Jingdijiwa. A frog living at the bottom of a well sees this tiny circle of blue above him and thinks, that's the entire sky. That's the whole universe.
So Bayou had convinced himself that the girls already in the Gardi Dayu Baochai were the absolute peak of human beauty.
He thought, this is it. It can't possibly get any better than this. He thought he was living at the summit of the world.
And then he sees the new cousins.
And suddenly the well opens up. He realizes there are people above people and skies beyond skies. He's just stunned by the sheer concentration of talent and beauty that the universe has suddenly dropped on his doorstep.
It's almost a philosophical crisis for him. He's realizing the world is so much bigger than his backyard.
He literally asks Old Heaven, how much essence and spiritual beauty do you actually have to create all these people?
The servants have a great way of describing the new girls, though. They call them 4 fresh scallions.
I know in English, being called a scallion or a water onion, it sounds like you're being called a vegetable.
Yeah, if someone called me a fresh onion, I'd be checking my breath.
Right, but in the context of the culture, water is the essence of feminine purity and spirit. To be a water onion implies this incredible freshness, vibrancy, and a sort of crisp, clean beauty. It's a huge compliment.
Okay, that makes so much more sense. And out of these fresh scallions, one stands out immediately. The new superstar, Xu Baoqin.
Baoqin is a phenomenon. She's Bao Kai's cousin, but the text goes out of its way to elevate her. Even Tanshin, who's usually very measured and loyal, admits that compared to her own sister, Bao Chai. Baoqin might actually be even better.
That feels like a bold claim. Baochai is the gold standard for beauty and grace in this book.
It is very bold, and it's not just the younger generation who thinks so. Grandmother Jia falls in love with Baoqin instantly. She's so impressed that she forces Lady Wang to accept Baoqin as a goddaughter, right on the spot.
Which is a huge status boost.
Huge. And then Grandmother Jia insists that Baoqin doesn't even stay in the guest quarters. She wants Baoqin to sleep with her personally, in her own room.
That is the ultimate power move in the Jia household. If you're sleeping in Grandmother Jia's room, you are the favorite, period.
She is basically hoarding the talent. She feeds off the energy of these young, beautiful people. And it's not just the girls. Bao Yu is also really impressed by the male arrival, Zhu Ke,
He notes that Sukike looks dignified and refined.
which is some heavy shade being thrown at Su Pan, the actual brother.
Oh, absolutely. Supan is the boorish, chaotic brother.
Yeah.
So Bao Yu is basically saying, finally, a male relative in the Su family who isn't a total disaster.
It just reinforces his worldview that essence or spiritual beauty isn't distributed logically by family. It just pops up in unexpected places.
So we have this influx of people. The excitement is high. But now comes the headache. The logistics of living.
Right. You can't just have all these people show up and not have a plan. And this part of the text is so interesting because it shifts from poetry and aesthetics to pure household management.
We see how the internal politics of the garden really work.
We do. So we already mentioned Baoqin gets the presidential suite with grandmother Jia.
Where does everyone else end up?
Well, Zuke is a man, so he moves into the study with Yu Pan. That's pretty straightforward. The Li sisters, Li Wan and Li Qi, are interesting. Their mother wanted them to stay elsewhere, maybe to avoid being a burden.
But Grandmother Jia says no way.
She insists they stay at Rice Paddy Village
Right.
with their cousin Li Wan. Again, she's refusing to let anyone leave. She wants a full house.
She wants the garden to be a bustling village.
But the most interesting case study here, and I think the most revealing, is Xing Jian.
The poor relation.
Right. She came with the Xing family. Now, we have to remember, Lady Xing she's complicated. She's not the most generous or warm character. And Xuyin's parents are described as difficult people who have mismanaged their money.
So Shuyan gets sent to live with Yingchen. But then Feng Ji steps in, and I think this is a really surprising moment for her. We usually see her as the Iron Lady, the ruthless manager.
We do. But here we see her emotional intelligence. Feng Ji analyzes Xuan. She realizes that even though Xuan comes from this difficult family, the girl herself is gentle, unassuming, and kind. She's not like her parents or her aunt.
And Feng Ji does some mental math. She knows Lady Xing isn't going to provide for Xuan properly.
And Xuan is too polite to complain.
Exactly. Feng Ji thinks, if I don't help, this girl is going to be bullied or she's going to suffer in silence. So she decides to offer Xuan a monthly allowance out of her own discretionary funds.
On top of what Ying Chen already gets, that's actually really touching. It feels like a mix of genuine pity and smart strategic peacekeeping. It's smart management. Feng Ji knows if Xuan is miserable, it creates tension.
Yeah.
But it also shows that Feng Ji values character. She spots that Xuan is a warm and thick person, meaning reliable and good-hearted, and she rewards it. It's a moment where the shark shows some softness.
Okay, there's one more straggler in this housing shuffle, Shi Xiangyan.
Ah, yes. The narrative mentions that her uncle, Xinai, is being transferred to a provincial post. He's leaving the capital.
So Xiangyan is effectively left behind.
In a way. Grandmother Jia wants to keep her, of course. They were going to set up a separate residence for her, but Xiangyan insists, quite stubbornly, that she wants to live with Bao Chai.
She just wants a slumber party every night.
Pretty much. So now you have Bao Chai, Shang Yun, and potentially the new arrivals all clustering together. The density of talent in these rooms is getting ridiculous.
This brings us to the inevitable conclusion, the poetry club. It was already the heart of the garden, but now it's massive. Tanshin and Bao Yu have a conversation about this, and Tanshin is thrilled. She says, our poetry club is going to prosper now. She credits Bao Yu's enthusiasm for summoning these people.
Like he manifested them through sheer force of will? So they start counting heads. What's this new roster look like? It's practically a sports team.
It is. You have Li Wan as the eldest, the leader, then the original core. Bao Yu, Dai Bao Chai, Tanshin, Yingchun, Shichun, and Zhang Yan. That's 8.
Okay, and the new recruits.
Bao Qin, Xing Shuyan, Li Wen, and Li Qi. And don't forget Sheng Ling, who has now leveled up enough to be a member.
That's 13 people, the power 13.
A baker's dozen of poets. And the text points out something really lovely about the demographics here. Except for Li Wan, who's a young widow and slightly older, everyone else is between, 15 and 17 years old.
That's a tiny age gap. They're basically all peers.
Right. And usually in a Confucian household of this era, hierarchy is everything. Who's older? Who's the aunt? Who's the cousin? You have to respect the generation gap.
Here, the text says they just stopped trying to sort it out. They stopped trying to figure out who was born in which month of which year. They just call each other brother and sister indiscriminately.
That feels really significant. It's like the garden has suspended the rules of the outside world.
It blurs the lines of the specific family branches, Jia, Wang, Shu, Li, Shi, and just blends them into one massive, youthful generation. It's a horizontal society in a very vertical world.
Kunshin suggests they delay the next meeting, though. Why wait?
She wants a full house session? Dayu's been recovering from an illness as usual. Shang Yin hasn't fully settled in yet. Tanshin argues that they should wait until everyone is comfortable and present.
She wants the grand unveiling of the new, expanded club to be perfect.
It's all about the aesthetic of the moment. It feels like they're building up to a festival.
It is a festival of youth, and I think that's why this chapter resonates so much with readers. I mean, if you step back and look at the whole novel, Dream of the Red Chamber is a tragedy. We know the decline is coming.
The family is rotting from the inside. Finances are collapsing. Political enemies are circling. But here, in chapter 49,
It's the calm.
it's more than calm. It's the zenith. The garden is full. The winter scenery is beautiful. Everyone is young, beautiful, and relatively happy.
The only problems they have are, how do I write a better couplet than my cousin, and where is everyone going to sleep?
Exactly. It's a rare moment of unity. You have all these major families under one roof living in harmony. It highlights the protective bubble of the Grandview Garden. Meanwhile, okay, imagine this for a second, a world made entirely of glass. It's the dead of winter, snowy, white, just pristine. And you've got these like vibrant bursts of red plum blossoms just cutting through all that white. The fashion is, I mean, unbelievably high-end. We are talking couture that costs a year's salary.
Right.
And the conversation is just whiplashing between intense academic literary theory and this really dangerous, cutthroat household politics.
It sounds like a paradise, visually. But, you know, as is typical with Dream of the Red Chamber, that glass world is transparent for a reason.
And fragile.
It's so fragile, and everyone inside is being watched.
And we're looking at a specific set of texts that covers a snowy party, some new cousins, and just a massive shift in the power dynamics of this family. We're talking about how a specific type of duck feather can completely destabilize a family hierarchy.
We're talking about how a truth bomb about servants reveals, you know, the rot underneath all that luxury.
We are finally addressing the whole frenemies arc between the two female leads, Lin Da-yu and Xu Baojai, because something huge happens here.
It really is a masterclass in social signaling. We're going to see how frenemies become sisters, how clothing is used to assert power, and how a literary reference can explain a romantic reconciliation.
So let's set the scene. It's the glass world, snowy red plums. The vibe is, it's high energy.
Yeah.
But it starts with this very intense, very nerdy debate between two characters who couldn't be more different.
Shangling and Xingyan?
Yeah.
Right. So first, you have Zhengling. She's the kidnapped girl turned concubine. She has this tragic backstory, but right now, in this moment, she is manic about one thing.
Poetry.
She wants to learn to write poetry. She is the eager, desperate student.
She's like that kid who sits in the front row and reminds the teacher to collect the homework.
Yeah.
She is all in, and she
Yeah.
decides the best person to teach her is, well, not the steady, reliable teacher.
No, she corners Shi Jianyan. Now, Xianyan is the wealthy, tomboyish cousin who, and the text is very explicit about this, is extremely fond of talking.
So you put the obsessive student with the obsessive.
The obsessive talker, exactly. It sounds like a recipe for insomnia.
It is chaos. The text says they discuss poetry day and night. They are literally keeping the rest of the house awake.
I mean, you can just picture them high-fiving over metaphors at 3 a.m. But what I want to focus on is what they're debating, because it's not just nursery rhymes. The text gives us a whole syllabus.
Yeah, I saw that list. They mentioned Du Fu, Wei Yingwu. For the listener who isn't, a scholar of Tang Dynasty literature, translate this for us. What does this list tell us about these girls?
It tells us they aren't dabbling. They are deep in the weeds. They're debating the gloom of Du Fu versus the simplicity of Wei Yingwu. Then they move to the ornateness of Wen Tingyan and the obscurity of Li Shangyin.
So this is high-level literary criticism.
Exactly. I mean, think of it like two teenagers, not just listening to music, but debating the production techniques of obscure B-sides from the 1970s versus like the harmonic structures of modern jazz.
Okay.
They are dissecting stylistic extremes. It shows that Xingling isn't just trying to fit in, she is intellectually hungry. She wants to understand the architecture of the art form.
And this is where we get the contrast with Baochai. Because Baochai is usually the perfect one, the responsible one. And she's watching this marathon study session, and she's over it.
Oh, she is the roommate trying to sleep before a final exam while her friends are debating philosophy in the kitchen. She calls them noisy. She calls them unbearable.
I love the nickname she gives them. Obsessed Shangling and talkative Xiang Yun, it feels so real, so sisterly.
It's affectionate bullying, but there is a pragmatic edge to it. Bao Chai asks them a very pointed question. Why are you obsessing over dead people, meaning the ancient poets,
Right.
when you have living experts right in front of you?
Meaning herself and Dayu.
Meaning herself and Dayu. It's a bit of a flex, but it establishes the baseline personality types before all the chaos starts. You've got Xiang Yun, the manic extrovert, Shangling, the diligent student, and Bao Chai, the cynical, grounded pragmatist.
And that baseline is about to get completely wrecked because a new player enters the game.
Xu Boken, the new cousin. And in a society that runs on visual signal, she makes one of the loudest entrances in the entire book.
The coat. Oh, man. We have to talk about the coat.
We have to. She walks in, and everyone just stops. The text describes this cloak as shining with gold and emerald. It's so visually stunning that it creates a moment of confusion.
Yeah.
Shangling, who we just established is the eager learner, she sees it and goes, wow, look at those peacock feathers.
Which seems like a fair guess, right? Peacock feathers are fancy. If I saw something iridescent and green, I'd assume peacock.
It is a reasonable guess for a luxury item, but this is where class distinction comes in. Xiang Yun, who has the aristocratic background, she corrects her immediately.
What does she say?
She says, no, that's not peacock fur. That is made from the head feathers of wild ducks.
Hold on. Wild ducks, like mallards.
Mallards, specifically the iridescent green feathers you see on a drake's head.
Yeah.
Now do the math. How big is a duck's head?
Tiny.
And how big is a floor-length cloak?
Oh my God, that is a lot of ducks.
You would need hundreds, maybe thousands of them. It is incredibly difficult to manufacture, rare to source, and it practically glows in the sunlight. I mean, it is a supreme luxury item. It makes a mink coat look like a ragged towel.
Okay, so it's expensive, I get that. But in Dream of the Red Chamber, nothing is just expensive. Objects are political. Where did she get this coat?
It was a gift.
From who?
From Grandmother Jia, the matriarch.
And this is the disruptor. Because usually who gets the best stuff from the matriarch?
Bao Yu, the grandson, the golden child, the center of the universe.
So for Grandmother Jia to just bypass him.
It is a massive signal. She's bestowing this ultra-rare status symbol on the newcomer, Baoqin, and she did not give one to Bao Yu. It signals a huge shift in favor. It's a disruptor to the social hierarchy. Even Bao Chai, who usually keeps her cool remarks on it.
What does she say?
She says, there's a common saying, everyone has their own destiny.
Wow, she sounds a little bit salty.
Maybe a little, or just, resigned. She points out that Bao Yu wouldn't have even thought to ask for it, but the grandmother just handed it to Baoqin. It's a reminder that favor in this household is fickle. You can be the favorite today and totally ignored tomorrow.
So everyone is standing around admiring this duck feather masterpiece and realizing the whole pecking order has just changed. And Xiang Yun, being Xiang Yun, decides this is the perfect time to stop talking about fashion and start talking about survival.
This is that truth bomb I mentioned. It's such a jarring transition. They're looking at this beautiful object, and Xiang Yun leans in to Baoqin and effectively says, listen, Ricky, here are the rules.
What's the rule? Because usually the rules are like, don't sit there or don't eat that.
The rule is this. You can play in the garden. You can play in Grandmother Jia's room. But do not go into Mrs. Wang's room unless Mrs. Wang is physically sitting there.
That is incredibly specific. Why avoid her room? I mean, Mrs. Wang is an elder. She's powerful.
It's not about Mrs. Wang. It's about the vacuum of power when she's gone. Xiang Yun says the people in that room, the servants, the secondary staff, are petty and bad and out to harm us.
Out to harm us. That's heavy. We're going from duck feathers to paranoia in like 3 seconds.
It reveals the reality that these girls live with. We see the luxury, the poetry, the snow, but Xiang Yun is saying that right outside this little bubble, there are staff members who are maneuvering, gossiping, and looking for ways to sabotage the masters for their own gain.
So if the boss isn't in the room is a Shark Tank.
It's a total Shark Tank, and it just shatters the illusion of that glass world. It's not just fragile, it's under siege.
How does Bao Chai handle this? Does she tell Xiang Yun to shut up?
She does, but in a very specific way. She chides Xiang Yun for having a straight mouth, meaning she has no filter, but then she admits, you have a point.
So she confirms the danger.
Yes, she confirms the danger exists, but she thinks Xiang Yun is reckless for saying it out loud. That's the difference between them, Xiang Yun names the threat, Bao Chai navigates it silently.
And then, true to form, Bao Chai diffuses the tension. She jokes that she should just adopt Baoqin as Yang Yin's sister since they both talk so much.
Classic Bao Chai. Acknowledge the truth, but then smooth the edges so nobody gets in trouble.
Whatever keeps the peace.
Speaking of keeping the peace, or not keeping it,
Yeah.
we have to move on to what happens next, the jealousy test. Because with Baoqin getting all this love and this fancy coat, the household is just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Right. The household knows its history. Specifically, they know Lin Dayu's history. Dayu is brilliant, but she is famously sensitive, possessive, and, yes, prone to jealousy.
So the stage is set. Grandmother Jia sends a maid, Amber, with a message for Bao Chai. And the message is basically, don't be too strict with Baoqin. She's young. Let her do whatever she wants.
Which is really the grandmother saying, I am spoiling this child. Do not interfere with your rules.
And Bao Yu and Dayu walk in right as this is happening. The group Xiangyan, Amber, Bao Chai starts teasing. They're joking about who might be annoyed by this new favorite. And Amber, the maid, decides to play a really dangerous game. She points her finger at Bao Yu first and says, the one who is truly annoyed is no one else but him.
Which is a joke, right? Because Bao Yu loves everyone.
Right, everyone laughs. Bao Yu's a lover, not a fighter. He's thrilled Baoqin is here. Bao Chai and Zhang Yun dismiss it immediately. He's not that kind of person.
So Amber pivots.
She pivots. She says, if it's not him, then it's him. But she points directly at Dayu.
Oof.
Yeah, it's a call-out. She's implying that Dayu is the petty one. And historically, she's not wrong. The expectation in the room is that Dayu should be seething with jealousy right now.
And Zhang Yun, who we know has had some beef with Jiayu in the past, she goes silent. That silence is so loud, everyone is just waiting for Dayu to snap or make a sarcastic comment or storm out.
And here's the twist. The moment that breaks the pattern, Bao Chai steps in. She doesn't tease Dayu, she defends her.
What does she say?
She says, you're wrong. My sister Dayu loves her Baoqin even more than I do.
Wow. She just shuts it down.
Shuts it down completely. And Bao Yu is standing there watching this, and he is completely confused.
He's like, am I in the wrong dimension? What is happening?
He is baffled. He thinks he knows Dayu better than anyone. He expects the drama. But instead, he looks over and sees Dayu calling Baoqin sister, treating her with genuine affection. The text says Dayu treats her like a biological sister.
So Bao Yu realizes his intel is totally outdated. The two people he thought were rivals, Bao Chai and Dayu, are suddenly, what, besties.
It raises a really interesting point about observation. I mean, Bao Yu lives with them. He talks to them every single day. Yet he completely missed the biggest seismic shift in the social dynamic of the garden.
He missed it all.
He realizes that Dayu isn't faking it. She genuinely respects Baoqin because Baoqin is intelligent and widely read. But more importantly, her relationship with Bao Chai has fundamentally healed.
Which brings us to the debrief. Bao Yu finally pulls Dayu aside and basically asks what is going on. But because they are massive literary nerds, he doesn't just ask. He has to quote a play.
Of course he does. He quotes the West Chamber. He asks her, when did Meng Guang accept Liang Hong's tray?
Okay, help us out here. Accept the tray. What does that mean?
It's an allusion to a famous story from the Eastern Han Dynasty about a couple, Meng Guang and Liang Hong. The story goes that the wife, Meng Guang, respected her husband so much that when she served him food, she would raise the tray to the level of her eyebrows.
Raising the tray to the eyebrows.
Exactly. It became a classic idiom for marital harmony and, extreme mutual respect.
So Bao Yu is asking Dayu, when did you get married?
Cheeky, right? He's effectively asking, when did you two become this devoted couple? Or, in their context, when did you drop the hostility and become allies?
Such a good line. And Dayu actually gives him the answer. She explains the pivot point, the wine game incident.
This is so crucial. In a previous chapter, during a drinking game, Dayu accidentally quoted a line from a forbidden romantic play, actually from the West Chamber, the very same book Bao Yu is quoting now.
Which was a huge slip-up. Good girls weren't supposed to read that stuff.
It was social suicide if she got exposed. And Bao Chai caught her. But, and this is why Dayu changed too, Bao Chai didn't expose her to the elders. She didn't use it as ammunition.
She protected her.
She protected her. She took Dayu aside privately and counseled her very gently, just advising her to be careful. And then later, when Dayu was sick, Bao Chai sent her bird's nest soup, a very expensive health delicacy.
The bird's nest soup. The universal language of, I care about your immune system.
It totally worked. Dayu admits to Bao Yu, I used to think she was hiding treachery. She thought Bao Chai was a snake in the grass. But now she realizes Bao Chai is genuinely a good person who looked out for her when she was vulnerable.
And Bao Yu's reaction to this.
Pure relief. He just says, the case is closed. He's so happy that the two women he cares about most are no longer at war. He feels like the world is finally at peace.
But, and there is always a but, in Dream of the Red Chamber,
Always.
this happiness is immediately undercut. We can't just have a nice moment. We have to talk about the physical toll.
Yeah, this is the sorrow beneath the joy. Just as they are celebrating this new sisterhood, the mood dips. Dayu starts talking about Bao Qin, and she gets incredibly sad. She realizes Bao Chai has a cousin, Bao Qin has a sister, everyone has a family network except her.
She's an orphan.
She's alone. And Bao Yu looks at her, really looks at her, and notices she doesn't look good. He says, "You are thinner this year than you were last year." He urges her to take care of herself, to stop seeking out sorrow. He treats her sadness like it's a bad habit she can just quit.
And then Dayu says something that I found just haunting. It might be one of the saddest lines we've read so far. She gives this physiological update on herself.
What does she say?
She says, "Recently I feel just as much heartache, but my tears seem to be fewer than last year."
It is devastating. The heart still aches, but the tears don't come.
And Bao Yu tries to logic his way out of it. He says, "Oh, that's just because you're used to crying. It's not possible for tears to actually run out."
He's in total denial, but the reader, and certainly you, if you know the mythology, knows better. Remember, Dayu is the crimson pearl flower who reincarnated to repay a debt of tears to Bayu.
Right.
That is her life's purpose. If her tears are running out...
It means her life is running out.
Exactly. Bayu dismisses it as her just getting used to the sadness. He wants to believe that the lack of crying is a sign of getting better, but the text is signaling that she is physically fading away. She is drying up.
It is such a stark contrast. The scene ends with this joyous, snowy gathering. They're roasting deer meat, wearing these high-fashion duck feather coats. They're laughing.
Oh.
But quietly, in the corner, Dayu is noting that her body is shutting down.
It creates this intense feeling of impermanence. The glass world is beautiful, but the person inside it is just evaporating.
What stands out to you about Bayu in that moment? Because he misses it, right? He completely misses it.
He totally misses it, and I think he misses it because of the reconciliation. He is so happy that Meng Guang accepted the tray. He is so happy that the social conflict is solved, that he refuses to see the physical reality. He thinks the problem was the fighting.
And now that the fighting is over, he assumes everything must be fine.
Right. But the problem wasn't just the conflict, it's Dayu's constitution. He mistakes social harmony for physical health.
Okay, let's shift scenes to how these characters handle a snow day.
Which involves, as it turns out, high fashion fit checks, 18th century aesthetics, and an impromptu barbecue.
Exactly. It's one of the most beloved chapters for fans because it's sort of the peak of this Grandview Garden utopia.
It is. It's the moment of highest aesthetic perfection before it all starts to crumble. But it's not just pretty descriptions. There's a real philosophical clash happening here between refinement and vitality.
Okay, so let's start with the visuals, because the source material spends so much time on what everyone is wearing, it feels like an 18th century runway report.
It's so deliberate. The scene opens, everyone's gathering in the garden, and the text tells us that almost all the sisters, the young ladies, are wearing these red 8-felt or feather satin cloaks.
So visually, you've got this vast white expanse of snow, and then these pops of striking red moving through it.
Red against white. It's a classic contrast in Chinese aesthetics. Purity versus vitality, cold versus heat. But if you look closer, that uniformity is actually a setup.
A setup to highlight the characters who don't fit in. Okay, so let's talk about Lin Dayu. She's often the emotional heart of the story. Does she stick to the red uniform?
She elevates it. She comes out in what's called a crane cloak. And this isn't just any cape. It's made of red feather yarn with a white fox fur lining.
Feather yarn?
Yes. And she's got these little red sheepskin boots with gold cloud designs. I mean, it sounds incredibly expensive.
It does. It also sounds like she's almost personifying the landscape. The red plum in human form.
She is the art. She blends into this perfect, high aesthetic glass world, but then you have the contrasts.
Right. Who stands out by not wearing red?
Well, first there's Li Wan. She's the widow, the eldest sister-in-law. While all the teenagers are in these vibrant reds, the text specifically notes she's wearing a blue camlet jacket.
A huge shift, blue versus red.
It signals her role. She's not really part of the youth club. She's the chaperone, the manager. Her clothes signal restraint and maturity. She's there to facilitate, not to sparkle.
And then there's Subi Baochai, Dayu's main counterpart. What's she wearing?
A lotus blue cape. But here's the key detail. The text says it has imported yarn patterns. So it's understated, but the material itself screams wealth.
It's that quiet luxury idea we talk about now. She doesn't need to be flashy.
Exactly, she's secure. But then, for a dose of reality, we have Xing Shuyan.
Right. She's a relative, but she doesn't have the same money.
And the text is actually pretty brutal about it. It just notes that while everyone else is draped in furs and imported fabrics, Shuyan's still in her old everyday clothes. No special snow gear.
Wow. So you have this couture snow party, and one girl is just shivering in her regular jacket.
It reminds you that this glass world isn't for everyone, even inside the family. But the character who really just shatters the whole visual rhythm is Shi Zhengyan.
Oh, yes. When they compare to Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. That is not a typical compliment for a noble lady.
No, but it's affectionate here. Dayu laughs and calls her Pilgrim's Son. Xingyan arrives wearing this massive black and gray squirrel coat with a huge hat. She looks like a giant furry ball.
Almost comical compared to the sleek red capes. But there's a reveal, isn't there? It's not just about looking silly.
Right. She laughs and says, "Look at how I'm dressed underneath." She throws off the squirrel coat, and her outfit is, well, it's shocking for the time.
What is it?
A short jacket, tight sleeves, a wide belt pulled tight. She's essentially cross-dressing. It's a martial, boyish look. The text even describes her as having a wasp waist and ape back.
Ape back. In English, that sounds like bad posture, but that's not it, is it?
Not at all. In this context, ape back means agile, long-limbed, broad-shouldered. It's the build of a warrior, not a delicate lady.
It implies she's ready to move.
Yes. And the group's reaction is fascinating. They don't scold her. They all laugh and say she looks even more beautiful dressed as a boy.
That says so much about her character. She's this uninhibited spirit that sort of transcends gender roles.
She is. She's ready to engage with the snow physically, not just pose in it. And that brings us to the character who is maybe the most obsessed with the snow, Bayu.
Bayu is having a full-on panic attack about the weather in this chapter.
He really is. Li Wan had proposed they start a poetry club, to welcome the snow. But Bayu is so anxious that the snow will melt before they can enjoy it. He's up all night.
I think we've all had that feeling. You're so excited for a snow day, and you're terrified you'll wake up and it's just slush.
Exactly. He wakes up, sees this bright light flooding the room, and his first thought is, oh no, the sun's out. It's all gone.
Which is a pretty reasonable assumption.
But he opens the window and realizes the light isn't the sun. It's the reflection off a massive snowfall. It's over a foot deep, and the sky is still, and I love this phrase, tearing cotton and rubbing flock.
Tearing cotton. That is so tactile. You can feel how thick and heavy that snow is.
It creates this sealed-off world. This is where Bayu says he feels like he's inside a glass box. Everything is pristine and perfect.
So Bayu needs the perfect outfit for his glass world. But unlike the others, his choice is a bit questionable.
It's a bit of a costume fail. He puts on a rush raincoat, basically a cape made of grass, and a gold rattan hat.
Wait, a grass raincoat? In the snow. Isn't that what a fisherman would wear?
Precisely. It's peasant gear. For him, it's an aesthetic choice, rustic and romantic. But the servants just burst out laughing at him.
It's rich kid cosplay. He's dressing up as a fisherman to walk around his private garden.
Totally. But he doesn't care. He heads out, and this leads to one of the most famous aesthetic moments in the whole novel. The red plums.
At the Green Lattice Nunnery.
Yes. Yeah. Amidst all this blinding white, he sees these trees full of red plum blossoms. The text says they look like rouge against the snow. It's the absolute height of refinement.
Delicate, visual, distant. It sets the bar for high culture. But then, the whole story takes a sharp left turn. We go from delicate plums to...
carnage. The feast.
Everyone gathers for breakfast, and Grandmother Jia is laying out the menu, and you see a real split in the diet based on age.
Right. For the elderly, it's steamed lamb with cow's milk. It's medicinal, soft, safe. But for the young people, she has something else.
Fresh venison.
Deer meat. And normally, the kitchen would prepare this in some refined, complex way, but Baoyu and Jane Yun, our Monkey King, they have a different plan.
They go rogue.
Completely. They're whispering, conspiring. They don't want the kitchen to cook it. They ask for a piece of raw meat to take into the garden and roast themselves.
That is the 18th century equivalent of ditching a fancy dinner to go gruel burgers in the backyard.
It is, and it causes a mini scandal. Lin Dayu overhears them and jokes they're going to eat it raw, like savages.
And a servant actually believes her.
Gantili panics. She says, you can't eat raw meat, you'll get sick. It just shows how far outside the norm this is for them.
But they do it anyway. They get an iron stove and some forks and set up right there in the snow.
And it's such a visceral scene. You have Bao Yu, Xiang Yun, and then King Fengji's chief maid joins in. She even takes her bracelet off to get her hands dirty.
And it's smoky, right? It's messy.
Totally. The smell of roasting gamey meat is wafting through this pristine glass world. It's a sensory invasion. They're physically cooking, which is not something aristocrats did.
And yet, everyone wants in. Even the super refined Baoken gets convinced to try a piece.
She does, and she admits it's delicious. Then Fengji, the manager, shows up and says, "You're eating the good stuff without telling me," and she joins right in.
So you've got this huddle of nobles crouching around a stove in the snow, tearing into roasted deer. It's so primal. But Lin Daiyu is not a fan.
No, she's not. Daiyu represents the high culture side of the argument. She looks at them and is just horrified. She jokingly calls them a bunch of beggars.
She literally says, where did this group of beggars come from? And that they've defiled the place with the smell of meat.
She's basically saying, we're supposed to be writing poetry about snow and plums, and you guys are making the whole place smell like a barbecue pit. It's a total clash of values.
But Jian Yin, while chewing on venison, delivers what I think is the key insight of the whole chapter.
I agree completely. She wipes her mouth and she says, true scholars are naturally uninhibited.
True scholars are naturally uninhibited. That feels like a thesis statement. What is she really arguing?
She's challenging the whole definition of refinement. For Daiyu, refinement is about purity, cleanliness, being separate from the messy biological parts of life.
Right. Art is supposed to be ethereal.
But Xiang Yun argues that true intellectual power comes from a zest for life. The term she uses is feng lu.
Feng lu. What does that mean exactly?
It's tricky to translate. It means something like wind and flow. It suggests being dashing, unconventional, following nature's course. It's more of a Taoist freedom than a rigid Confucian ideal.
So being a scholar doesn't mean you have to be frail or stuffy.
She actually calls the others fake high-minded. She says, we're eating this meat now, but later we will have embroidered thoughts, beautiful poetry. She connects the appetite for food with the appetite for creativity.
I love that. You can be smart and artistic and still get barbecue sauce on your face.
Yes. And notice that Bao Chai, who is usually the voice of reason and rules, she backs Yang Yun up. She jokes, okay, but if your poetry is bad later, you'll have to chew on snow-covered reeds as punishment.
A fitting punishment. If you eat the meat, you better bring it to the poetry contest.
It validates the whole thing. The meat is fuel for the art. You can't create if you aren't willing to engage with life in a messy, direct way.
So the barbecue ends. They wash their greasy hands, and then we get this little mystery subplot.
Right. Pinger, the maid, goes to put her bracelet back on, and one is missing.
Now, normally, a missing gold bracelet would trigger a massive investigation. Accusations, beatings.
But watch how Fengji, the manager, handles it. Everyone starts looking, and she just says, stop. Don't look for it.
Why? Is she just dismissing it?
No, she's being all powerful. She says, I know where it is. Just go write your poetry. It will turn up in 3 days.
That is such a power move.
It's total confidence. She's implying she knows the household so well. She knows the servant dynamic. She probably knows exactly who took it. She refuses to let a petty theft ruin the party.
She's saying, I'll handle the dirty work. You all go be artists.
Exactly. So the group moves to the Green Boya Hermitage, the Luxuan, for the main event, the Poetry Club.
And the setup sounds pre-cozy. The text says they have underground heating, so the floor is warm even though it's freezing outside.
And Lin Leiwan, our manager in blue, sets the rules. It's going to be linked verse.
For anyone not familiar, how does that work?
It's basically poetry improv. One person writes a line, and the next person has to immediately come up with the next line that follows the rhyme and meaning, and so on. It's a relay race.
So no time to sit and think. You have to be quick.
Very high pressure. And to make it harder, they're limited to a really restrictive rhyme scheme, the tu shao category.
Okay, so the pressure's on. They've had their feast. They've had their inspiration from the glass world. And now they actually have to perform?
And that is exactly where the chapter leaves us hanging. They're all just standing there, looking at the rhyme scheme, about to figure out who goes first.
A classic cliffhanger.